Hey guys, welcome back. Hey, today's episode, as you can see, we have the Revell monogram. This is from Battlestar Galactica, and this is the Cylon Basestar. This is an older kit that I was able to get. This one I've been looking for. So let's just dive quickly in and see what we got here. Now I have already started assembly on this, but I just wanted to show you. It's a very basic kit. It's a skill level 2. There's not a whole lot of pieces. In the box right now I have the bottom section. You're basically going to get 4 halves to the 2 different parts of the ship. It's basically 2 circular parts that connect, if everybody's familiar with the ship. So you're going to get 4 halves to the 2 different parts. And as you can see, I've did some light blocking and some white paint. So there's some black acrylic paint on here, and then covered in with some white acrylic paint. And I'm doing some lighting effects on this. Talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Here's the bottom. This is actually the bottom section, and these 2 will fit together, and I'll have lighting inside those. But outside that, you only have some pieces right here that kind of go along the circumference of the bottom and top. You get 2 basically identical part sections that look like this, and that will have little cross sections over, I guess, the landing bays, and then these smaller parts will go over here. You get a base, won't be using the base, and you get like a top section and a bottom section. So not a lot of parts. The real challenge in this model is sealing the 2 halves together. Especially this older model, you only have 3 connecting points, and they're not really even balanced. You have 2 that are closer together, and then 1 here, and that's what kind of holds it all together. So it gets it, somewhat centered when you put it on, but then when you squeeze it into place, you're going to have a lot of gaps, especially since I'm lighting this, and I'm just going to do backlighting. I'm not doing fiber optics. I've already did the top section, and the challenge is to seal this part. And you have these 2 extensions that come off the landing bays, and putting them together, there's a lot of flash. They don't seal over well. I'll show you how I address that in the top section here shortly. But to do the lighting for most of it, what I did is I took some of these strip lighting and cut into segments, and I'm going to do 2 of these in each half of the ship, and I'll basically run this around in a circular form inside like that, and I'll do that on this section, and then I'll also do it on this bottom section around here. Or actually, this is the top part, this is the bottom, but we'll have lights in both parts of those. So when we put it together, we'll have 2 rows of lights, putting out quite a bit of light, and with the white, make it nice and bright inside there. So that's the plan on that, and then I'll exit out the bottom here, and then we'll connect the top and bottom together. So that's the bottom section. Let me go ahead and show you the top. Move this out of the way. Now in the top section, I've already have it put together, and you can see I have wiring coming out, and I have a lot of holes drilled into the section. Not a whole lot. There's when I watch the show, there are lights, but it's not like multitudes and multitudes. So I basically have holes drilled in these sections right here, and then some throughout these landing bay areas. As you can see, I put in these cross sections and these other sections, and also this top section was a piece. So all that's glued together. Now you can see I'm trying to address all of the gaps and issues. I've just used some styrene to kind of extend that runway out. That took care of the gap, gives it a little bit more detail. There's another gap in here where I've added a piece of styrene, and I think once we paint it all, we'll blend all in, it'll just look like extra detail. I'm in the process of going along now. Once you get it closed together and glued together, the seam line in the middle is not too bad. It's kind of hidden in the details, but I have been taking some files and sanding sticks and just kind of smoothing out to where in some sections it looks like one piece, and when you look at it, you'll kind of see one piece together. So this section is ready to be primed. I think I'm going to do it in halves. I'm going to prime over this section and go from there. I think I got it sealed pretty good. A little bit more cleanup work on these edges, and but we'll prime it. The Basestar, I've seen different paint schemes on it. When you watch the TV show, it mostly just looks like it's gray. In the box art, we have some different colors. It's actually kind of blue, but it shows different colors. I've seen some different things. Undecided about the paint scheme just yet. I'm just going to start off with a gray primer and go from there. All right, so here is the bottom section of our Cylon Basestar. And as you can see, I have my lighting strips. They're just hot glued in. I find that hot glue works just fine. I've heard some people say that hot glue can damage the lighting elements, but I've never had an issue with it. So I'm going to keep doing it until I do. I've cut a bigger hole. This is actually the top section of the upper part of the bottom section. Let me get that straight there. And as you can see, I've added in some styrene there for detail, but also when I go to join the two halves, it was just kind of sitting and you'd have to glue this, and this was the only thing kind of holding the two halves together. So I thought I would add these extensions to it, and one that'll help center the top half to the bottom half, and then we'll be able to glue this onto, so we'll have a lot more support. And we'll have, once we paint all that, it'll cover over, and I think we'll add a little bit of detail. You can see I put in some little square styrene in there just to kind of make it look like there's a landing bay, and add a little bit more detail. Maybe do a little bit more to that just to kind of dress it up. And we cut all of our holes, and just to kind of see, I usually hold it up to a light source to see how my holes are showing, and looking pretty good. Now once I paint it and do all the other stuff, we'll be putting some window maker over all those, and that'll help bring out the light. So that's where we're at, and we'll just keep going. All right, so I'm about ready to attach my final section of our Cylon Basestar. As you can see, I have the wiring done. I have my lighting strips, and they're all hot glued into place. This is actually the bottom section. It's the last piece that's going to be going on. You can see where I've connected the wire, and this will just be the part that actually plugs into our base. So I'm not too worried about how that looks, because it has to be plugged into a base, and that'll support it. And that's glued in there with some hot glue for support, and we have some more strip lighting in there. And the reason I did it this way is I connected half to the top half of the ship. It's upside down at the moment, and that way I can get all the wiring finalized and test it, which I have. I just tested it. Now I've sealed and connected all the wiring, so now I can connect this other part on top of here and get the gluing done with that. It's a little tricky. This is these sections aren't level anymore, so I have to glue those down, put lots of clamps on them to get that. And then once we get all that glued down, we can do our primer over the entire model and start doing some detail painting and weathering. All right, I have our Basestar all assembled and glued together. And I know this isn't a very good video. We'll get better once it's complete. Now I am going with the primer color as the base color. Now we'll have to seal over it. We'll put a clear coat over it to make sure that it looks good and that everything's sealed in good. But I think that the gray goes quite well. As you can see, I have it masked off. I'm going to do some slightly darker gray accents around here and throughout the model, just to kind of give some detail. Then once we do all the accent painting, we're going to do a clear coat. I'll probably use like a satin clear and go over the entire model, and then we'll go into like a probably a light gray wash or a darker gray wash, just to kind of bring out some of the accents and see how that looks. All right, I've applied a satin finish over the entire model. That's why it has a little bit of a shiny look to it. And we're going to be making some washes, and I'm going to just be using some acrylic paints. I got some grays and blacks I'll probably mix together for a darker gray. And I mixed that in a bowl with some of this window cleaner until I have like a watery type consistency. And then I'll just simply brush it off a wide paint brush, let it settle in, and then I'll start wiping it off all the areas I don't want it. Just want to try to bring out some of the detail in this model. It has a lot of detail, but it kind of blends in because the model doesn't have a lot of colors. But we do have it attached to the base. I did have to put some little supporting rods in there for the base for it to hold up the model. Is wanting to lean to one side. And real quick, you can see we have our lights on. Now we still have to cover all those windows with some window maker. For now they're just open holes. Once we put the window maker on there, hopefully it'll bring out those lights a lot better. And just to show you kind of the bottom going on with the lights. So looking pretty good. Now it's just the detail time. We'll put that wash on, and then we'll cover it all up with a matte varnish. All right, as you can see on the bottom here, I've now put a coat of our wash on there, and this is just a mix of gray and blacks. I have to kind of keep it stirred up, and just give it a few moments to let it start drying in the crevices, and then we'll come back over with some rags and start wiping off the excess from around it. With the pretty dark gray to really get into those corners, I think once we get it wiped off, it will really bring out the detail on this. Alright, so here we are for our finished Cylon Basestar, and I think it turned out pretty well. We did our dark gray wash over all of it and then wiped it off. I apply the wash, I allow it 30-45 minutes to kind of set and dry in the crevices, and then I just take a rag, cloth rag, and start wiping it down. Some places if you add a little water, it helps to also help remove the excess that you want from the model. So just finished it up with the wash, and then I did a matte varnish, and I just used this product here with my airbrush, and I did matte varnish over the top of it once I wiped away all that I wanted off of it. So for a 20-year-old model, I think it turned out pretty well. The issues I have, the biggest ones are these round parts are really not very flat anymore. There's quite a bit of warpage in them, and you had to really fasten it down and glue it well. There's only 3 connecting points like I showed earlier on each section of it, so a lot of this edge really has to be addressed. There's quite a bit of sanding that went into these edges, sanding and filing to take away the seams and the gaps that were created by the warpage. And we just have our lights here. Now I haven't did the window maker yet. I'll do that later. For now, I think it's looking pretty well. And just look at the bottom of it. And just kind of a top view of it. And I want to keep it somewhat original to what you see on screen. On screen, you just see, kind of this gray ship with not a lot of color or detail. So try to limit how much colors went into it. I did, of course, a little bit of accent with this kind of off gray color, just to give them some accents along with the wash. But when you combine the wash with a little bit of color accent, I think it turns out really nice. So this is a model that I've wanted for some time. They are getting harder and harder to find and a little bit more expensive than you may want to spend on it. I got this one for a pretty good price, so I'm pretty happy with it, and it'll be a nice addition to my collection. So I hope you enjoyed the project, and until next time, everybody have a good one.